So the third paper this afternoon is being presented by Miss Queenie Lai, who is a professional consultant at the Faculty of Law at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And her paper is entitled, "Never Let a Good Crisis Go to Waste, Blended Learning Post-COVID-19, Giving the Discretion of Zoom Teaching to Teachers." Over to you, Queenie.
Thanks, Rita. I've got a video prepared. Thanks.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining my session. My name is Queenie Lai and I'm from Chinese University of Hong Kong Faculty of Law. During COVID-19, universities around the world were forced to venture into uncharted territory and go 100% online. In-class lectures and tutorials were replaced with Zoom learning. Everyone was forced to adapt quickly to this new mode of learning. So as the saying goes, never let a good crisis go to waste. What can we learn from this crisis? The big question for everyone is, post-COVID-19, where do we go from here? How do we adapt learning for the future? My suggestion is very simple. Post-COVID-19, we don't need to go from 100% online learning back to 100% face-to-face. Can we have something in between? Post-COVID-19, everyone has already experienced Zoom learning and the benefits of Zoom learning. We should think about blended learning when appropriate. I have a very simple idea, perhaps worth exploring. My idea is that instead of a university or faculty-wide uniform blanket online learning policy, I think it should be up to the individual teachers to decide whether each class, each lesson, each program, each curriculum would be more effective delivered through face-to-face or more effective through online learning. Teachers knows their own course and the lesson plan the best, so teachers should be allowed to have the discretion to plan and tailor-make their own courses. And when considering planning the courses, planning whether a class should be conducted online or face-to-face is not merely a logistical administrative decision. It's not merely a logistical administrative exercise. Whether classes are conducted online or face-to-face mode, teachers should consider carefully whether a blended learning approach would be appropriate and should be considered with clear pedagogical objectives in mind. Which would be a more effective way to deliver the materials to students, which way would allow students to receive the materials more effectively, which way would be more engaging. And it really depends on each individual class, course, or curriculum. In this session, I will show you some examples where I think online learning may be equally or even more effective through online learning. We should think about the right tools for the right job, and we should also trust that the educators and the teachers knows what's best for their own courses and curriculum. So what have we learned from this crisis? It's time to reflect. We've learned that teachers and students can be flexible, adaptable, resilient, and open to learn new learning modes. We've learned that online tools such as Zoom are very powerful online tools. For CUHK, in term 1 last academic year, it was entirely face-to-face on campus. And in term 2, we quickly moved entirely online in January because of the coronavirus. Feedback shows generally that although teachers and students generally prefer on-campus learning for their interaction and engagement and instant feedback, feedback shows that online legal learning can be just as effective as face-to-face learning, and online learning in term 2 did not compromise academic learning. So there are basically 3 options to go, 3 learning modes. What do students and teachers prefer? What is the preferred learning modes? There is 100% on-campus face-to-face learning, the traditional mode. There is 100% online learning, the pure distance learning mode. And of course, there's a third way of a blended learning approach. If given only the first two choices, feedback shows past surveys findings have shown that generally students reject the pure distance learning mode. They would much prefer the face-to-face teaching, on-campus learning, the university life, the campus, their interaction with peers and teachers. Classes are much more engaging face-to-face. But however, if given the third choice, blended learning, students and teachers have commented on various benefits of online learning. There are certain aspects of online learning that are very beneficial, and perhaps a blended learning approach may be the way to go. What are the benefits of online learning? For example, students have commented that, number one, Zoom lectures can be recorded, so students can review the lectures after class at their own pace, at their own convenience, at their own time. So there's synchronized and asynchronized learning, students learning at their own pace. There's a chat function through Zoom, and students can simultaneously ask questions throughout the Zoom lecture, and that encourages Q&A and allows students to have instant interaction. There's also the share screen function, of course, where teachers and students can share materials online, and that has been tremendously helpful, especially for example, contract drafting courses. There's also the breakout room function. The breakout room function aids interaction and, of course, group and peer discussions. And most importantly of all, the convenience of Zoom learning. You save time from commute, and you can join anywhere at home, anywhere around the world. Just as this teaching and learning conference, we have speakers from all around the world. So inviting overseas guest speakers to your course, it's viable now through Zoom learning. So I suppose the majority, when asked, given these three modes, actually preferred a blended learning approach, having the benefits of both ways of learning, the best of both worlds, and having both face-to-face and some aspects of distance learning when appropriate. Whilst the majority of classes, I would say, would be much more engaging in class and face-to-face, and a lot of teachers prefer the face-to-face teaching, traditional method of teaching, I will now give you some examples where I think that online learning may be equally or even more effective through the online learning mode. For example, legal writing and drafting. Contract drafting, where we have the share screen function in Zoom, we can share a particular clause from a precedent and ask students to focus on the language and wordings of a particular clause and mark up the clause together simultaneously together in the class. So I thought that share screen function where students can work together on a particular clause and where students can share their draft clauses together for discussion was particularly helpful. Previously, when it was done in an in-classroom setting, we have to show students work on the visualizer, and students sitting quite far back at the back of the room may not be able to have as much interaction than those who are sitting in the front of the classroom. So for Zoom learning, everyone, have access, clear wordings in front of their screen. Another example where I thought from my own courses that online learning may be even more effective is where I have to go to the source materials on websites online. So I have to teach students procedural form filling and working on listing rules from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange website. So with the share screen function, I can actually tell students where to access those forms, those listing rules, and we can work on the form filling exercise together online through the share screen function. And I thought that worked particularly well. One last example where I thought online learning is also very helpful is where you have to use a lot of visual graphs, but at the same time a lot of interaction with students. So I have to teach connected and notifiable transactions, which is chapter 14 and 14A of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange listing rules. I have to illustrate, based on the listing rules, whether someone is considered a connected person. And so through these visual graphs I can share on screen, we can work out through these problem questions and go through one by one whether each person is considered a connected person. So I thought that also went well, and it's just as effective, online or in an in-classroom setting. So the big question is, going forward, how should we adapt future learning? We've all learned about the benefits of having an online component. These are some of the benefits. There could be, if appropriate, increased learning effectiveness for certain courses, certain classes. Having a blended approach, both face-to-face and online learning, can enrich the student learning experience. And this online mode, it's particularly important to prepare students for their future work as future legal practitioners, because these days many of these meetings with clients will be done online through share screen, through Zoom. And actually, we have quite a high attendance and participation rate for tutorials, for Zoom learning. Student attendance and engagement was made possible because of the flexibility and increased convenience through Zoom learning. So for part-time teachers, part-time students, overseas guest speakers, evening weekend tutorials, and the increased convenience, students are able to attend many of the classes, high attendance rate, high participation rate. Last but not least, I think when we consider adapting an online component, we should think about carefully the difference in approaches, perhaps for undergraduate and postgraduate students. For undergraduate students, Bachelor of Laws students, I would recommend a much higher percentage of face-to-face learning. They should experience campus life, have a university life, bond with their peers, have interaction with teachers and students. So that is the approach for undergraduate courses. And even for, Masters of Law course that are 1 year, where students get to study abroad for 1 year, I think they should be encouraged to experience the campus life and experience the university, experience the interaction with peers. In contrast, for postgraduate courses, such as the Postgraduate Certificate of Laws, which is in Hong Kong equivalent to the legal practice course, I thought that certain aspects of that course we can consider a blended learning approach, an online component, a small aspect, small percentage of it can go online. Because number one, we're preparing them to become future legal practitioners, so they should be prepared to be resilient, adaptable, flexible in both face-to-face mode and online learning. Second, is they're more mature students. They should be responsible for their own learning. They're independent and they've already experienced campus life as part of their undergraduate studies. So a blended learning approach would actually enrich their learning experience as a postgraduate PCLL student. So to conclude, going forward, these are some ideas to explore. how do we adapt learning for the future? So my very simple idea again is, instead of a blanket school policy, 100% face-to-face or 100% virtual learning or a blended learning approach, can we give the discretion to the teachers themselves to decide based on the needs of each individual course, each individual curriculum, whether an online component would be suitable? If we give the teachers the discretion, then they are the best person to decide whether each class, each lesson would be equally or more effective delivering online or face-to-face. Which way would be better to deliver the desired learning outcomes? Which way would students be more engaged? Which way would students be able to receive more information? Whatever the case, if we do adopt hybrid forms of learning, every effort must be made to ensure that the highest quality education is given to our students. But if we give the flexibility to teachers, then teachers can think and consider carefully and plan with pedagogical objectives in mind going forward in deciding whether to adopt Zoom learning for parts of their class or courses. Thank you for joining me in today's session.
Thank you very much, Queenie, for that presentation. You certainly covered a great deal of material in that. Do we have any questions for Queenie? So first question, Queenie. If only parts of the subject are online, will this not cause confusion or chaos among students as to where they should show up? So it's a question about how do you coordinate those options for students?
Yes, I thought that was an excellent question. Thank you. So I would say, for our PCL course, there's usually a simple schedule for teachers and students, which lectures, which room you should attend for your lectures, which room you should attend for your tutorials. But so instead, I thought, if you're planning ahead a whole term of classes, and in your time schedule for the whole term, academic term, you can simply set out clearly whether you're going for Zoom link or you're going to that particular classroom. So I thought for postgraduate students, they should be able to adapt, just like these meetings these days, it could be face-to-face meetings, it could be Zoom meetings. So long as we give advance notice, not like a short notice, I thought students can plan carefully their day. And in fact, it saves them a lot of time hanging around the university, waiting for late night evening tutorials. So long as we set up clearly in our schedule for students, whether it's a Zoom link or a classroom to attend, because this exercise, I imagine that teachers should plan ahead for the whole term, 13 lectures or 10 lectures and 6 tutorials. They should plan ahead which exact class it should be done through Zoom or done in person. So that should be advance warning. So I actually just wanted to share, it's just a very recent update, just late this week actually. So our Chinese University of Hong Kong provost sent a recent update for the upcoming new academic year. And basically I echo his views. He says that this upcoming academic year, COVID-19 is easing off, but we have to plan ahead. So the plan is that face-to-face teaching can be accommodated for about 80% of the classes. So mixed mode of teaching will be the new norm. And he suggested that it will be up to each faculty, department, or teachers to decide what form of blended learning should go ahead. For example, you could have both face-to-face and synchronized online teaching for the same course at the same time, giving the students the option to attend in person or in Zoom. Alternatively, courses can require students to attend classes in person in alternative weeks, and then in other weeks it would be online. So basically, you know, for logistical and enriching students' learning experience, I also agree that mixed mode of teaching should be the new norm. So I guess my simple suggestion is let the teachers decide. Let the teachers experiment. You know, it's trial and error at this stage. Give them the discretion, give them the flexibility, find out what works, which works, which doesn't work through feedbacks and surveys. So you know, this would allow, because every course, every curriculum, every program, every learning objective is different, whether it's compulsory course, elective course, procedural course, substantive course, drafting course, advocacy course, it's all very different. So we should think about giving the teachers the discretion to tailor-made it for their course. Sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you for those insights, Queenie. Another question, what are the disadvantages of online learning over offline learning, and how can this gap be filled by a blended model?
That's another excellent question. Of course, there are pros and cons for online and face-to-face learning. The disadvantage, in my opinion, is we have to, when we do our lesson plan, we have to design very carefully. And as I think an earlier speaker, Deborah, talked about this, how do we engage students? If we want to have the lessons as effective as face-to-face, then we have to think about going beyond the normal lecture and Q&A tutorial. Are we just simply teaching the legal content, or are we trying to teach students a well-rounded, holistic education where we train them up as, you know, future legal practitioners? So the skills bit, we have to think carefully. So some earlier suggestion was, I entirely agree, group projects, you know, group collaboration. Then, you know, even through online learning, we can ask them to do group project. So for example, for my own course, how do I engage them? You know, it's just not a simple, straightforward delivery or Q&A session. I would give them an authentic case study about a project planning to get listed in Hong Kong. They have to evaluate it. They know it's an authentic case study, so there's more motivation, engagement. And I plan it, give them instructions so that it is self-directed learning. What I mean is they have to find their teammates, they have to discuss the approach, and then they have to do a group presentation online in Zoom as a client pitch. So the other element to this client pitch is a client presentation. So it's not just about the legal contents of your teaching. It's about going beyond teaching them legal rules. Ask them to think of themselves as legal practitioners. How would they advise a client? How would they give clients practical solutions that is feasible and, you know, with commercial awareness, clearly aware of what's going on in the latest market? So these are some of the ways to overcome the disadvantage of it's very easy to not be engaged with online learning, but you have to carefully design your lesson plan. So I'll give you a few more examples, if I may. Real authentic case studies, self-directed learning, you know, students, active learning, where you encourage students to become, you know, the creators of knowledge rather than mere passive recipients. So ask them to be group presenters, role play as lawyers, and in other talks we've heard about creating a blog, creating their own videos. These are ways to overcome, you know, the possibly the disadvantage of online learning.